Good morning. I want to welcome everybody this morning to the Georgia Cyber Center. Many of you were probably here yesterday for the PEO EIS sessions that took place that went very well. It's great to see the crowd here this morning. I know there's probably some others that will come in as we get started. I want to give you a few ground rules, then I'll do a quick introduction, and we'll get on about our business here with the C3T team and the Futures folks. So, first thing you need to understand is the questions will come from you today, and you have a mic in front of you, and you have a red light. I need one volunteer. Raise your hand, just one. We're going to test that mic, okay? So here's how you work it. You push the button down that's right in front of the device there, and hold it down. The light will turn green. Keep your finger on that button and ask your question. Go ahead and do a test.
Test, no question at this time, over.
You got to move up close to the mic.
Test, no question at this time, over.
Is that working?
Test, test.
There you
Test,
go.
test.
Okay, there you go. But the trick here is to have your mouth close to the mic. Two reasons really. One, we can hear you, and two, this is being piped back to the Cyber Center PEO pavilion area. There's two screens there, so I'm sure some people saw that yesterday. So hopefully that'll work out. Second item is, if you do make a bio break, the easiest way is to exit, make a right and a hard left, and the restrooms are there for the men and women right there. I think that's probably the only ground rules we need to have this morning. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started, and I want to welcome all of you here today, and thank you for attending TechNet Augusta. We really appreciate that you're wearing the mask. I took mine off. The speakers have an option to take it off or wear it when they speak. If you heard General Fogarty a while ago, he left his mask on, as I recall when I left. But it'll be better acoustics, a little bit better acoustics as you're speaking. So welcome to our second session this week of the PEOs. We are truly honored that the PEOs have taken advantage of this opportunity to really fully engage in a format like this, and also to meet with you at their pavilion that we set up especially for them. So I think you'll enjoy that if you haven't already. We've got two back-to-back sessions this morning. We'll start with a joint keynote from the PEO C3T, the Army Futures Command cross-functional team, and the DEVCOM C5ISR Center. We got the three speakers sitting right in front of you. This session will be followed by a panel featuring the same organizations as well as representatives from the 101st Airborne Division. We'll transition from the keynote to a panel without a break. So we'll just do a quick transition of folks that are being up in front of you. You'll have a chance to ask questions throughout the session. This is really intended to be an engaging session. That's why you don't see a bunch of slides sitting in front of you. So let's make that happen. So it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, who is Mr. Nicholas Sachs, the Army Deputy Program Executive Officer for Command Control Communications Tactical. Mr. Sachs has held acquisitions at many positions at various Army organizations since joining the Army Materiel Command in 2005. As Acting Deputy PEO C3T, he guides a workforce of more than 1,600 personnel supporting over 50 Army acquisition programs and efforts, including the development, acquisition, fielding, and support of Army's tactical network. Gosh, we've heard so much about that this week already, and it's going to continue on. Joining Mr. Sachs this morning will be Brigadier General Chethray, Director of the Network Cross-Functional Team, fairly new into the job. It's a great position for him. And Joe Welch, Director of the DEVCOM C5ISR Center. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm welcome for Mr. Nick Sachs, who will start the session.
Thanks, Mike. I am not Nick, but I work with him. I'm Brigadier General Jethray. I'm going to really start the session off, and then I'll hand it over to Nick. This is a team effort here, and then I'll hand it over, and then Joe will close us out, and then we'll wait for your questions across the board. But I just want to say, again, thanks everyone for being here. Appreciate you taking time to come down and spend a few minutes with us. kind of hear us out on where we're trying to go as far as modernizing that tactical network. And then Mike and the team over with FC, thank you for putting this together. So glad that we all can be together in this environment after almost 2 years of going through COVID, and we have an opportunity at least to be together face to face and get after these challenging problems that we have with the network. And to the Cyber Center of Excellence, Army Cyber Center of Excellence, those guys, thank you so much for hosting us here. They've been doing a great job across the board, so thanks a lot. So I want to get started this morning. I just want to talk a little bit about being 60 days in the seat right now here at the network cross-functional team. I'm coming in from an operational environment, really strategic as well, down at U.S. CENTCOM as the J6. So I come in really from that side down to the tactical level and trying to take another look at this. So over the last 60 days, worked with my team to kind of understand, the problem set when it comes to providing this modernization across the board to our forces. So I'm going to give you kind of my thought process on where I believe we should go when it comes to the tactical network. A lot of things that we're currently doing is not going to change. Nick will expound on some of those, and then Joe will really dig in a little deeper into the C5ISR piece of it, the S&T piece of it. But, the bottom line is this. I've been charged as a network cross-functional team director to provide our warfighters reliable communication gear. And that's what I'm gonna try to do with the team of teams putting all this together, and your feedback as well, and industry partners helping us get there. That's what we're gonna try to do, put reliable comms into their hands. The other thing that I do here at the network cross-functional team is I identify those gaps along the way. We will then work together as a team to find out what the best solution is to fill those gaps. We prototype those gaps, we test and evaluate those gaps, use soldier experimentation along the way as well to ensure that we're getting the right piece of gear that we can put into the hands of the warfighter. Because at the end of the day, it's about the warfighter and whether or not they have the tools necessary to execute on target. My second part of my job is to ensure that we meet MDO 2028, be ready by 28, and be capable by 2035. So that's another charge that I have, and I work with the team collectively to meet that objective across the Army. So how are we gonna do it? We use capability sets. Everyone are pretty familiar with those capability sets. Nick will drill down on those, what that actually means and where we're at on the capability sets. There are 2-year increments that we iterate on, that we also try to ensure that we're building better solutions along the way throughout the time frame, and then improving on it along that way. And again, Nick will drill down, and Joe will let us know how we actually do those experimental and demonstration pieces of it. So how do we do it? As I sit in the seat, I think for years we've been in a network-centric environment, and it's time to move to a data-centric environment. We have to have cloud instances around the world. It's about data. You've heard it the entire time you've been at the conference. You probably read many times over the data strategy. We have to execute on that. And it's really about data. Data is the key. We got intel data that we're working with. We have our sensor data out there that we're working with as well. We have to find ways to get that data and share it, not only with ourselves, but with our partners as well. It's going to be key. That's how we're going to win the next war, is continuing to fight with our partners. The second part of that is, in order to get to that data, we have to have a transport-agnostic environment. There's no other way to get there. Our systems have to be smart enough to build the best transport or acknowledge the best transport in order to get to where the data is. And then the final piece is encryption. While our data is in transit, it's important that we continue to keep that data encrypted while in transit. And we have to get the best, the toughest, and most secure data that we can get to wrap encryption to wrap our data in. It's very, very important that we do that. And so that's the 3 things that I'm going to have the team continue to focus on data. We're going to look at transport, agnostic environment, and then we're also going to look at our encryption, both in transit and at rest as well. So we have to look at both. And at the end of the day, and every one of you have heard, when it comes to the network cross-functional teams that are out there, what underpins each of those cross-functional teams is the network. So the network is key to realizing all those, to include JADC2, to include that all-domain environment and multi-domain environment. It is all about the network. And so with that, I'll stop there. I'll let Nick drill down a little bit on the CAPESATs, and then Joe will take us into understanding the C5ISR environment. And I'll stand by for your questions. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, General Ray. My name is Nick Sachs. I'm the Acting Deputy PEO for C3T. I appreciate the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for coming today, this week. Thank you, AFCEA, for hosting. As General Ray laid out some goals for the future network and where we're going, one thing that's important there is we can't get there overnight. We can't do it all at once. It's not operationally feasible to do that. So we've put together and we're executing a strategy to accelerate the rate at which we incorporate and field new technologies in order to support the goals of the unified network and in order to, which include optimizing the network, as General Morrison talked about yesterday. We are currently, right today, fielding increased capability to units, while at the same time putting processes in place to ensure that we continuously innovate and improve our network capabilities through the capability set construct. The capability set strategy, as General Ray laid out, it's an every 2-year strategy. It supports the unified network goals, it supports JADC2, and its intent is to continuously deliver increased network capability to enhance connectivity, operations, and security. FY21 was a banner year for us at PEO C3T and within the C5ISR family who's on the table here. It marked the first year that we fielded the capability set equipment to operational units. This equipment is smaller, lighter, faster, interoperable, and flexible communication systems. It's a mix of traditional ACAT programs and also mid-tier acquisition programs. So at the PEO, we're leveraging all of the authorities granted to us by Congress to find the right pathway to get this equipment to the users as fast as possible. We're fielding 4 IBCTs in FY21. We're finishing that up now, and we're planning to field 5 brigade combat teams in FY22, with one of those being the first striker formation to get the IT and equipment. We're also fielding 3 ESBs this year as part of the ESB enhancement program, and they're getting expeditionary, agile, and scalable communications equipment, and we expect that rate to continue at 3 ESBs per year. One of the most important things through this process that's really critical to our strategy and our capability set process is user feedback. So we take every opportunity we can to hear feedback from the operational units, and throughout the last couple of years, we've done a number of soldier touch points, experimentations, and fieldings, and at each step along the way, we gather user feedback on how our systems are or are not meeting their requirements. And there's kind of 3 common themes I want to share with you all today that we hear fairly consistently across our operational units. One is that the network initialization and NetOps is still pretty complex. It's getting better, but it's still fairly complex for the units to set up the network. So we're going to continue looking at network management tool, consolidation, and virtualization to see how we can improve that process for the soldiers. The second area I'd like to mention is training. So we need more general purpose user training. We need training products that are simpler and easier to understand. And we need a continued commitment from commanders to send the right people to training, both general purpose users and 25 series soldiers. My background is an acquisition logistician, so training is near and dear to my heart, and I'll say it's critical that we as an enterprise deliver the right training to the users. It's also critical that the users are there to accept the training, and there aren't many successful fieldings without a positive training outcome. And one other thing I'll say is I believe that there are opportunities. We've seen a lot of collaboration, software, expanded use in the last year and a half with the pandemic. I think there's a lot of opportunity that we can work with industry to be a lot more creative on our training products and how we do remote training or leave behind training or on-demand training. So that's a focus area where I think we can really improve. The third category of feedback that we hear is that the users want material and technology that is tailorable to their mission. So we're learning a lot from the users, specifically the 101st right now, on how they're employing CPCE and TSI in real-world operational missions, both CONUS and OCONUS. And we're taking that feedback back into the PM shop, internalizing it, making it a part of our development, because we want to make sure that we continue to field operationally relevant capability to the soldiers. So you'll hear from the 101st a little bit later on the panel. So as we're taking in all that feedback, we're continuing to move forward. As I said, we're fielding capability set 21. We're also in the middle of developing capability set 23. It's scheduled for a critical design review next April 22. Capability set 23 will see an increased convergence of warfighter functions onto the TSI server stack. We'll see, Cape set 23 will see cyber SU distributed across formations, and it'll also see a continued simplification of network management tools. And looking a little bit farther out, we're partnering with the CFT and C5ISR Center on the early stages of capability set 25, which will be expanded to armored formations. And that's going to start as early as this year with the armored characterization, with partnering with 2-3 on an ABCT on-the-move pilot. So as we look farther into the future, our work is very closely intertwined with that of our Army S&T partners. So I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Joe Welch, C5ISR Center Director.
Hey, thanks, Nick. And let me just echo my panelists here's appreciation to FC and the Cyber Center of Excellence for hosting us here today. I've done a lot of panels since this whole thing started, and this is the first one back with everyone. So I'm really glad to be able to do this. Although this room is interesting, I feel like if we don't do a good job, you guys up top, you might be able to actually throw things and hit us. So I see up there. Yeah, we'll try to do a good job. So, this is, General Ray mentioned he's 60 days into his job. I'm just a little bit ahead of him, 90 days into this job as the director of the C5ISR Center within DEVCOM, Army Futures Command. So, we've got a number of other centers that are focused on different warfighting functions that are pretty aligned to the CFTs and the PEOs that they support. But I've been working in this community for a long time, having previously sat in Nick's seat and been there for the beginning, kind of as we put together the network modernization strategy, the capability set strategy, and so it's an area that I know very well and near and dear to my heart. But from the C5ISR Center perspective, we cover a large amount of ground. It's very similar to kind of the viewpoint that General Ray takes. We're in everything. We're tied to every CFT. We're tied to every other center because the technologies that we're doing underpin everything. And within C5ISR Center, we do other things, right? We do sensing and detection and other types of capabilities, but the biggest, and certainly in terms of resourcing, is about the network modernization efforts that we're collectively doing here as this team of teams. So I'm just going to talk about a couple things today, and that's S&T and experimentation. So those are some key capabilities that we bring to this collective team here. So General Ray and Nick, they talked about the capability sets. Nick talked about some of the evolution from 21 to 23. For the C5ISR Center, working on developing, prototyping, integrating some newer technologies, we're focused a little bit on the farther end of that. Capability set 25, automated and protected. Okay, so these are the themes that we're looking at. And that's kind of like right in our sweet spot right now. 27, multi-domain dominance. These are the technologies that we're experimenting with today, that we're funding investments in for science and technology efforts, partnered with a lot of you sitting in the room here today. And they're all aligned within the lines of effort that we've established within the network modernization priorities. So just as some examples, unified transport. And I know General Ray's talked about moving from network-centric to data-centric, right? Data-centric is great once we can trust that the network is going to be there for us, right? And it's reliable And one of the key ways of getting at that is, and Nick mentioned this as well, getting down the complexity, getting to the automation piece, right? So we've got a funded S&T project ongoing right now, and I know a lot of you on the industry side have IR&D looking at how can we have intelligent decision protocols that are enabling the network to take advantage of multiple paths, right? You can go satellite, you can go to GEO, you can go to LEO, you can go other types of beyond line of sight that aren't satellite-based line of sight. All of these different ways of getting data in and out and reducing the configuration cognitive burden on the soldier and ensuring that that's automated and able to be providing that capability. So we're starting to, we've been talking about this as a core tenet for unified transport for a long time, and we are now demonstrating that technology within our labs and out in the field, and welcome looking at any of the technologies that any of you have that are helping support in that area as well. Moving into data, so the concept of a common operating environment, a common operating picture, a single pane of glass, right? Underpinning all of this is the notion of, and you've probably heard talk of data fabrics, right? To me, speaking from kind of where I sit, what that means is that we've got all of the systems that we have that generate data. It's able to be freely exchanged, and there's some core tenets associated with the ability to discover the data that's out there, the ability to have data synchronization, meaning if you can't get to it right now, you should be able to kind of come back online and receive data that you might have missed, as well as the data security. And so, that's a sea change from the way that our warfighting systems work today over heavily prescribed information exchange formats that have messaging standards, and it's all kind of prescribed. There's a lot of other data that our weapon systems are generating that could be used for enabling the MDO concepts of speed and range and convergence and decision dominance. And so the concept of a data fabric is something we're heavily invested in right now. We're partnered both on how we're spending money as well as our cooperative research agreements with many of you on that. And then I'll just mention, again in that area, General Ray talked about encryption, and I'll probably talk about a bit of a security as well, right? Right now, the data exchanges that we have, they're also heavily prescribed when it comes to information sharing, particularly across classification levels. It's pretty binary rules-based decisions. We're invested in areas right now that are looking at how do you build up information trust? How can you tell that, whether somebody's technically complying with the rules or not, the behaviors of that actor, whether that's a human-based or machine-based actor, is it looking different than normal? Are there flags that we need to go and follow up on? And increasingly, this is going to be important because there's going to be an overwhelming amount of data as we start bringing all of our sense detect, all of these other type of forward capabilities online, as well as, we've got a lot of riding on machine learning, artificial intelligence. We have to figure out how to protect that as well. So adversarial type attacks that can go against that, that's going to be part of our information trust, automated cyber focus areas. And so we've got a lot of S&T projects, and we'll talk probably at the next panel about more of those, but just kind of wanted to plant the seed about some of where we're investing the Army's dollars right now in helping to inform both network CFT, PEO C3-T, and our other partners in maturing this technology, achieving multi-domain readiness and dominance. The last thing I just want to mention, so the experimentation. So we take all of this S&T, but it's not just what we develop ourselves. It's the stuff that the PEO has. It's stuff that you in industry have that you may have invested IR&D on, and you've got cooperative research agreements with us. We've got an annual event up in New Jersey called NetModX, where we're able to put these things through their paces in a field-based representative environment. We've got a lot of flexibilities when it comes to spectrum, when it comes to threat, and it's a great opportunity. So, if you're an industry member that's on contract with us, you're probably up there already. If you're not, but we've got a cooperative agreement with you, we're able to kind of get you in and expose you to that field environment so that you can learn both on your tools and how it might fit into the overall picture. If you're a soldier sitting here today, we would love to have you up there and provide feedback to some of the capabilities that we're demonstrating there, because it's just the next logical step off of the PowerPoint, developing it in the lab, getting it out there to kind of kick the tires and see how this stuff is really working. Before we bring it forward, Nick talked about preliminary critical design reviews into that capability set process. This is where all the ideas are kind of being sorted out, and so welcome your participation in that, as well as your questions for us or the panel to follow us later here today. So thanks, and I'll turn it back over to our moderator, I guess.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Justin Eimers, PEO C3T Public Affairs. As you heard mentioned, I'll be moderating the follow-on panel after this, but I just want to facilitate the Q&A for our keynote speakers here this morning. So I'll certainly take any questions from the audience. So maybe I'll start off with curious to hear what some of the operational feedback you've gotten from users in your first 60 days has been, and kind of how that's shaping things for you as you continue to move forward in your new position.
Yeah, Justin, thanks. So, I mean, I had an opportunity to go out to the 101st a couple of weeks back and got some feedback from capabilities that we provide them, which was the CPI-2 and CPCE. Very, very positive feedback on the CPCE side of the house. On the CPI-2, obviously there was some adjustments we have to make along the way, but it's incredible to get the feedback directly from individuals that are touching the equipment on a daily basis. It really makes a difference. And I think that is something, you know, we need to continue doing. We're not going to make any changes when it comes to that, because I think it's very important that we get that feedback right away. And that therefore we can adjust the capability of the equipment. We can make adjustments to what it provides to the user. So definitely been very good so far, so I appreciate it.
So right over here.
Thanks for coming. Our question right now in the battle space and try and, okay, there I go. So the question is around electrifying the battle space and the power resiliency that you're up against. I'm looking at battery technologies, and what are the things that you're doing right now to advance the ball in that court? And where do you need the most help?
So I can talk to power. So that's one of the sort of core competencies we've got in the C5ISR Center. Obviously, it applies to network, applies to everything, right? Putting this stuff out there all requires power. I can tell you a few things on that. So in terms of the the technology maturation and the chemistries and things like that, what we're particularly concerned about is the operational environment that we're going to put this into. So what I found is that there are among the power energy community, there are some common themes in terms of how the chemistries are moving forward and things like that. But some of the challenges we have in particular are the form factor, the operational environment, making sure that it's going to work for wherever we're going to be. Alternate energy, we used to have larger investments in that area in terms of, kinetic or soldier powered or things like that. And I think that that's probably an area we're going to have to look at again in the future, especially as there's what's looking like some potential for greater efficiencies. We have to be able to reach the point where the benefit that we get out of those types of alternate energies is actually worth it. And that was a challenge in the past, but it may not be so much anymore. And then this part of it gets overlooked a lot, but there's two sides to that equation, right? There's the power required to run something, and then there's the demand side, right? So anybody who's in here who is probably most of you are on the demand side, right? I would just ask, think about the technologies and techniques that you can embed into your systems that are power sensitive, right? Because all of this stuff, this results in weight, it's load, it's mission effectiveness. It can be about survivability as well, right? And so I think we're leaning forward on the power piece, and we've got a lot of S&T and investments and partnership going on in that area as well. But the demand side is just as important, and so I would just leave you with that. Consider that as well as you're putting your systems together, your thoughts about things you may be interested in providing for our assessment or integration.
So I'll add a little bit more, because I know the second part of your question was the EW side of the house, correct? Okay, so the EW side of the house, that's the reason, in my thoughts, that we need to move to a more of a data-centric environment. So taking the network on our backs to the battlefield is probably something that we don't want to do for the future, right? And we don't want to have that signature out there with us either. So we want to make it lighter, faster, and more capable. And then the ability to reach back for our data more so than actually have the data reside locally where we are, in the masses, in the terabytes of data that we usually carry forward with us. So That's another reason why. We want to be lighter, faster, and more mobile to move across the battlefield so we don't have that signature while we're sitting there either trying to pull in all that data.
All right, I see one right back there.
Yes, sir. So I just curious, you mentioned Congress and leveraging, dollars, obviously, with infrastructure being, highly important to our battlefield operations. How much planning has gone into leveraging the infrastructure dollars that we're currently investing or currently looking forward to for MDO for our future force?
So it sounded like the question was something about infrastructure dollars. I'm sorry, it's hard to understand with the mask on.
That's fine. Can you hear me now better? So the question is leveraging, how much planning has gone into leveraging infrastructure dollars for our MDO, since you're talking about leveraging money from Congress?
Leveraging infrastructure dollars for MDO, is that correct?
I mean, I'm not sure exactly what your question is about leveraging funding for infrastructure for MDO.
Roger. So, requests for, to get the appropriate dollars to actually support, not repairing, but actually building our network within the military force to be better, to be able to be capable.
Okay, I think I caught a bit of it. I mean, you probably heard General Morrison's brief yesterday reference the unified network. Were you able to hear that? If you weren't, so there is definitely a plan that's going to be implemented to take the strategic network and the tactical network and form the unified network. My job is to as the network cross-functional team director is to build that security architecture that's required to join that network together. That'll get us ready for MDO in 2028, and that's part of that infrastructure across the board that we're trying to really build out. Whether or not the funding is there, General Morrison, the CIO, and myself, along with the team of teams, we're all working to put that plan together and request the funding that we need in order to see that to fruition. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
We might have time for one more.
General Ray. General Ray, you mentioned your 3 key priorities for the upcoming fiscal year. Do you have a priority of 1, 2, or 3, or all 3 at the same time?
You mean as far as the 3 that I laid out together there? All 3 of those are working in concert. So it's going to be, this is a data-centric. We have to look at the transport, and we're still working with NSA and the rest of the industry partners for the encryption piece of it as well. So this is a holistic approach in order to get there.
All right, folks, how about another round of applause for General Ray, Mr. Sachs, Mr. Welch. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, just hang tight. Give us a couple minutes. We're going to adjust the table here and switch to the panel. So just sit tight just for a minute. Thanks.
I want to thank the first session very much, and we appreciate your questions also. When you use that mic, it's a little challenging to use that mic in front of you, but just hold the button down, move your face down a little close, not so close that it starts muffling you out, but give it a shot, and I'm sure it'll work out as we go forward. So our next session here, Justin Eimers, who is just up here, is going to come up and he's going to run this thing in just a minute, but I just want to quickly introduce just by name the folks that are up here. And just a little bit about Mr. Imers is he's been a public communications specialist since 2017 with the PEO C3T, and he's also worked in Tobyhanna Army Depot. He was probably happy to leave there so he get his new job, but he's doing a great job, and he's been an inspiration in coordination for this event this week. So you're going to be hearing from Lieutenant Colonel Natasha Coleman, Product Lead, Unified Network Communications Capabilities and Integration, PM Tactical Network, Lieutenant Colonel Randall Linneman, Assistant Chief of Staff G6, 101st Airborne Division, UA, Matt Mayer, Program Manager, Interoperability, Integration and Services, and Michael Montalino, help me, that's close, right? Their Director, Engineering Systems Integration Directorate, the DEVCOM C5ISR. They're here to talk to you a little bit, but they're also here to hear your questions. Here we go.
Thanks, Mike, and hi, everyone, again. I'm back. I'm not going to spend too much time talking up front. This is certainly meant to be a two-way conversation. So I know Mike already did the introduction, so I don't even have to do that. So, Mike, I'm just going to turn it over to you, and we'll get the party started.
Let's do it. Thank you, Justin. Everybody can hear me back there? All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Mike Monteleone from the DEVCOM C5ISR Center, newly in the position of Director of Engineering and Systems Integration at Aberdeen Proving Grounds, Maryland. I can't thank AFCEA and the Army Cyber Center of Excellence enough for having us here today. I always enjoy participating in TechNet, and it's really, really good. I'll echo Mr. Welsh's comments. It's really good to see you all in person again. So I look forward to the interaction today. One theme that you've heard from the senior leaders over this week is really about, in order to modernize our Army, it's all about teamwork. It's about integration across the community, and the definition of the community is the joint community. And creating and leveraging opportunities for all of us to learn together is going to be key to that success. I really appreciate the opportunity to chair the panel today. We have a great panel of outstanding acquisition professionals, and Lieutenant Colonel Linneman came here to talk to us from an operational perspective from the 101st Airborne, so we're really looking forward to that. My organization, the C5ISR Center, we're focused on aligning our science and technology projects and our experimentation activities towards operational outcomes that inform and deliver capability aligned to the network modernization capability set construct. And of course, everything that we do here in the modernization world is underpinned by our two big concepts, and you've heard them here this week, you've heard them here today: multi-domain operations and joint all-domain command and control. And I think sometimes we get lost in just kind of spitting out those terms and don't really dig into what they mean. So I'm just going to take 2 seconds to kind of to bring us back and level set us on what the key tenets of those concepts are, right? So MDO and JADC2, it's about warfighting capability. It's about to be able to sense, to make sense, and to act at all levels and phases of war, across all domains and with our partners, to deliver information advantage at speed of relevance. I mean, that's really key. The concepts also tackle operational capability holistically, and that's through use of mission threads, sensor to shooter, situational awareness, joint targeting, and both kinetic and non-kinetic effects, as well as the ability to maneuver and sustain our forces during that. It's also really important, and we need to remind ourselves here, that we're not talking, when we're talking about joint warfighting capability, we're not talking about programs and policies and service-centric activities. JADC2 in particular is inherently collaborative, and the Army continues to collaborate in close collaboration with our sister services in many of our supporting initiatives, including the Army's capstone campaign of learning, which is Project Convergence. Project Convergence provides the context for learning and experimentation to address what we know about future conflicts. They're going to be multi-domain in nature, and the ability for us to outmaneuver our adversary will rely on a combination of strategic, operational, and tactical effects. And I do expect this panel's discussion here today to touch on all of those things. Some of the topics we're going to cover here today also tie into emerging capabilities that focus on both JADC2 and MDO concepts, and as well as how we share and access all that critical data that feeds those key analytics that provide those concepts that we're going to rely on in the future. I'm also looking forward to hearing from our panelists' perspective on the unified network and breaking down that tactical to enterprise and enterprise to tactical divide that we've been talking about this week, especially how it is shaping all of our current initiatives and plans going forward. So we look forward to your questions. As you heard earlier, we look forward to your partnership. And Justin, I'll turn it back to you to kick it off.
Sure, thanks, Mike. Colonel Linneman, I certainly would welcome an opportunity for you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do, and also give us an idea of how, from the G6 perspective, you're ensuring network operations support MDO.
Hey, Justin, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and appreciate the opportunity to sit on the panel. So as the G6, I'm the primary advisor to the Commanding General for the 101st on all things information technology and command and control, mission command requirements. And really what that translates to is how we array our command posts and how those command posts function in the fight. When we look at that, how the network supports MDO in the fight is primarily by providing the Commanding General the data he needs to make the decisions at the time he needs to make those decisions. Roughly, I bin those into 4 different, I won't say categories, but areas of focus for me. Transportability, warehousing, exposure, and contextual, when we talk about the data. What I mean by that is the CG needs the ability, I need the ability to support the CG by having the ability to smoothly transport data around the battlefield. Kind of speaking to what General Ray is saying when he's talking about transport agnostic, whether it is LEO, MEO, GEO, host nation cellular, any means to be able to get data out is what we're looking for when we talk about that transportability of data, so that we don't have to carry everything to the fight with us on our backs. Ideally, we're not carrying our terabytes of data on our backs. We can put it somewhere else and get to it in the way we need to get to it when we need to get to it. So that's what I mean when I say transportable. When we talk about warehousing, everybody, data fabric's a buzzword, and it's always, what does that mean? So to me, what really comes down to is having all of our data in a place that's highly available and readily accessible. That high availability so that it's there when you need it. Now, that's a balance between carrying the data with us on our backs where you always have it, but it's not accessible because you kind of violate the rule of 3. I don't want to carry 3 different servers on my back so that if one fails, I've got a backup. Whereas when you look at a high availability zone, things like that, you have that high availability for data. Leveraging GATE, or Global Agile Integrated Transport, we make it more accessible. As long as I can use transportability and get back to a regional hub node, I can hit GATE and I can get back to where my data is hosted, so I don't have to have it on my back. That also reduces the amount of other networking devices I have to carry on my back because I'm leveraging through GATE. And so when we talk about that warehousing, really it's in a deliberate, purpose-built location, not with me randomly in the field where we're able to stop for 5 minutes to 5 hours, which may not be an ideal location to throw up a hasty data center, which is kind of what our packages are amounting to sometimes. When we talk about exposing the data, that's stepping a little bit outside my lane, but where we're really at is working with my team, working with the partners, which is the G2, our data scientists, our analysts, everybody else. What we're really looking at is how that data is exposed to decision makers, to analysts, even to programmers, if we have anybody that's kind of handy with Python or R, to be able to crunch through data sets that we have to make sense of that data for the CG to make a decision based on intelligence and not just information. How that data gets exposed, whether it's through an application programmer's interface or APIs, or if it's through just sound governance through policy, governance meaning making all data usable to all stakeholders who have the need to know and the authority to know that data, that's kind of what we look for exposure. And that is definitely a team of teams effort in the division. I'm not the primary stakeholder on that, but I definitely inform that discussion because I own the requirements for storage and transportability of that data. And then the last thing is contextual, and it came up in the earlier discussion with the single pane of glass. Really what we're looking at is how does the commander visualize data? How does the commander see his data in a way that allows him to make the informed decision? Single pane glass is kind of the platonic ideal. It's the goal, it's the objective that we're looking for, so that you have the objects arrayed. I'm an operational level person, really tactical by background and nature, so I like maps. I'm a maps-driven person. Most of the people I work with are maps people, so if we see an object on a map, we want to be able to double-click on that object, interrogate it, and then see the data pertaining to that object. whether it is something in the airspace and we're wondering what the payload it's carrying is, or if it's a ground force unit and we're wondering what their rate of travel is crossing the field. There's a lot of metadata that can be in that. And so we're looking for that single pane of glass solution where we can double click the object, interrogate it, and then have data pulled either through APIs or through governance to spit out to us and show us in that single pane of glass what we're looking at. When we talk about contextualization of data and how we understand that through visualization. And I know that that is a lofty, lofty goal. And I can't say enough how far we've come and how quickly we've come trying to achieve it. So I appreciate everybody's effort on that.
Yeah, so we keep hearing a lot about the need to, reduce complexity and simplify network management. And Mr. Meyer, within your organization, as the program manager for network management and operations, can you describe a little bit about what that office does and some of their key focus areas?
Yeah, sure, Justin. Good morning. First, let me say it's great to be here on a panel that's comprised of this team of teams. To really get that operational perspective from the 101st Airborne, to kind of get a little bit of sense of where science and technology, research and development is going from the C5ISR Center, and of course with my partner PM and Tactical Network. So I think, first of all, I'm Matt Meyer, the PM for Interoperability, Integration, and Services. Unified Network kind of falls within my portfolio. It's part of the product manager for Tactical Cyber Network Operations. But yes, getting after that sort of unified picture, common operational picture, that unified planning, configuration, loading, management, and securing of the network kind of falls within my team's portfolio. And what we're interested in is really developing that unified set of NetOps tools. You heard earlier you heard some of the speakers talk about the single pane of glass, the ability to kind of visualize and contextualize information from the common operating environment. We also need to be able to visualize and contextualize all of the network components, and kind of their current status, their network health, how they're monitoring, what is the load or the traffic load on those nodes. And so a lot of that stuff is important. And right now, unfortunately, there's many, many different network tools out there, right? And so one of the things we're really trying to focus on is collapsing those as a part of the unified network. We really want to focus on taking a lot of these disparate tools developed by lots of different vendors and kind of putting them, using some DevSecOps, some mid-tier acquisition to sort of collapse that information, to collapse that data and build the capability that gets after kind of contextualizing that for the lower tactical internet, the middle and upper tactical internet, and even the enterprise levels. And the reason that we're kind of using mid-tier acquisition to start is we want to really get after that soldier feedback and that experimentation to make sure that, as we're developing kind of the unified network operations tool of the future, we get a lot of feedback on what works and what doesn't work as far as a network operations perspective. And so we've already fielded, the Techno team has already fielded capabilities to a number of units, including 3rd ID, 10th Mountain, 82nd Airborne, 25th ID, 11th TTSB, and a number of SFABs. And what we're using, a lot of that information is part of the CapeSet 21 fielding to gather that feedback and sort of understand where units want to go from a NetOps perspective, understand how they want to visualize that data, get it into a single pane of glass, and then be able to use that feedback to alter the requirement as we go forward. And so, that will certainly inform, it will streamline, it will converge those capabilities over time as we move towards the UNO program of record, which is slated to kick off in FY24 timeframe. And so we're really interesting. We've collapsed about 30 NetOps products to date, but we're interested in collapsing many more. I think the target is something like in the 180 something different products need to be collapsed that we're aware of. We're building NetOps from the ground up, so we're starting with the lower tactical internet. We just did we're getting ready to do a material development decision on the kind of the full rate production of our lower tactical internet capability in Techno, and we're going to get after releasing that capability along with the radio fieldings that are happening in FY22, and then we're going to grow that with additional network management planning tools for the middle and upper tier, and then as well as the enterprise levels to include areas that currently doesn't do, like ICAM, identity and credential access management. So really focused a lot on collapsing tools over time, and with that I'll pause. questions.
Sure. I think obviously we were talking a lot about, this data side of the unified network and that strategy. But there's obviously another key component to that, which is the hardware piece too. And Lieutenant Colonel Coleman, in support of that strategy, the Army is looking to modernize and converge the CSS satellite communications network. Can you talk a little bit about that effort and why it's important in support of the unified network?
Okay, thanks, Justin. So real quick, I just wanted to do a quick introduction of myself. Natasha Coleman, and within POC3T, PM Tactical Network stood up a new product office to get after maturing key technologies within the tactical network, and also responsible for integrating some of those key technologies. So have a really important role here as it relates to supporting some of the capability set developments for the whole unified network approach. So as it relates to data, as General Ray mentioned in his keynote notes, data is a critical part of the unified network. And so one of the approaches that we, from a tactical network perspective, are taking is looking at SATCOM, a SATCOM capability. So we, along with our S&T partners and our network CFT teammates, are positioning a mix of both military and commercial SATCOM capabilities to support development and fielding efforts for CAPESAT 23 and 25. As mentioned earlier by the keynote speakers, we're informing our material development decisions through extensive market research and technical exchanges with our industry partners. Soldier feedback has really proven to be a valuable source of informing our material decisions. Operational evaluations, technical demonstrations, pilots, and more. So you'll see here in the near future a lot of RFIs to our industry partners about helping us with developing those commercial SATCOMs capabilities to kind of get after what Colonel Linneman talked about, making sure that it's easily transportable, and we believe SATCOM capability will help us get there. Some of those targeting experimental efforts that we're working on with Project Convergence, whether we're looking at LEO-MEO, high capacity GEO, SATCOM as a managed service, protected SATCOM. So those are a lot of areas of capability that we're exploring. Single scalable terminal to capitalize on virtualization. So we're certainly looking at virtualizing waveforms, and then the flexibility to access different space segments with minimal configuration. So those are some of the areas within PM Tactical Network that we're looking at as it relates to SATCOM and data. And we're hoping that this approach enhances our current our PACE options to support realizing JADC2.
Mr. Monteleone, I don't want you to feel like you're left out. We got you the opening comments, but can you kind of talk us through a little bit about what your organization and your role, how the CRADAs are allowing industry to kind of get a little slice of these efforts?
Yeah, thanks, Justin. So couple quick things. I mentioned before the portfolio I lead is engineering and systems integration. That's across the C5ISR centers, broad range of technologies and mission spaces. And one key piece of that portfolio is our experimentation everywhere from our physical sites, but even in our laboratories, where we pull systems of systems together and we work through integration challenges collaboratively. And that's a really key word, and I'm saying collaboratively on purpose to kind of bridge into the CRADA piece of the question. We know that we're not going to modernize in a vacuum, right? We're going to have to work together. We need to work together with all of you. And really, one of the key mechanisms that we have in the science and technology world is be able to partner with industry and academia through an agreement called a Cooperative Research and Development Agreement. And it's a legal agreement between the government and whatever party we get into that agreement. And what's really key to that is we can exchange information that we can't necessarily in a forum like this, right? We can exchange information, sensitive information, classified information, as it pertains to your technology or an operational environment to which your technology may be may be exposed to. And then together, we can iterate, whether it be in our facilities, your facilities, and others, and then also allow you to participate in some of those experiments. And Mr. Welsh talked about the network modernization experiment that we host up at Joint Base McGuire-Sticks Lakehurst. That annual experiment is really one of those key places, locations, that not only does it allow industry to come into that environment to where we're very focused on our modernization efforts, but we also are able to do a lot of environmental representation of the operational environments to which your capabilities or your technologies may need to serve as if they're employed as operational capabilities. So that's really a key mechanism. Glad to take any other questions down the road here on CRADAs in particular. Many of your companies have been involved in them and before. They do not, it's not a monetary exchange, it's more of an in-kind exchange. And it's something that I'm very proud of, that I think when you have two parties willing to work together and communicate, we're able to turn these in a matter of months, and only a few short months often, sometimes even quicker if we've been down that road before. So I definitely encourage the team to engage any of the C5ISR Center reps here in regards to cooperative research and development agreements. Thanks, Justin.
So we heard a little bit about the command post integrated infrastructure effort and the feedback coming out of the operational assessments that are ongoing. Mr. Meyer, can you kind of provide some insight on some more observations from the CPI-2 effort?
Sure, Justin. Yeah, so the command post integrated infrastructure, also part of my portfolio. It's very focused on, you heard General Ray talk about earlier about how we need to make our data and our command posts a little bit more mobile, secure, agile in the battle space. And so that's what the CPI-2 program is really focused on. It's on improving the command post infrastructure to really get after that agility, survivability, and mobility of those forward-facing units on the battle space. The Command Post Integrated Infrastructure Program is a kind of a two-increment approach where we're using the first increment, 0, to sort of get after that soldier experimentation, that soldier feedback necessary to make sure that we're making the right decisions. We talked a little bit earlier about how the system, in addition to being kind of more suited to that agility for units, it also needs to be highly flexible and configurable by units. And so really focused a lot on that with our increment 0 BCTs. And so, so far, 3 units have been provided, CPI-2, the 2-2 Stryker Brigade up in Joint Base Lewis McChord, 3-101, of course, in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and then 4th ID in Fort Carson, Colorado. But each of those units is conducting operational assessments using the recent CPI-2 infrastructure to sort of give us that feedback, to give us that operational context on how they intend to use the new equipment, how they intend to use the new shelters that are being designed, how they intend to use the mobile electric power and the onboard vehicle power, and how they intend to integrate that on the battle space. And so I think from that perspective, we're really getting some great feedback from these soldier-led events. The intent is really to improve the ability for a command post to emplace or displace, meaning set up and tear down, to get after hours versus days and weeks, and to also add a lot of that survivability to the command post. So RF shielded ruggedized enclosures, getting after a low signature, understanding the LPI, LPD, and the EW perspective of the shelter, kind of utilizing that best of breed approach to get after some of those challenges. And so in our Increment 0 program, we're actually competing multiple different CPI-2 approaches, both from industry and from government, to sort of get different feedback on different designs, different configurations of those designs, different types of shelters mounted on different types of vehicles, and sort of get that operational feedback. And I think we really are getting some good feedback. Like I said earlier, we have 3 operational assessments planned this year. 2-2 and 3-101 already happened. And we got a lot of good feedback on the number of shelters that they'd like, the configurations they'd like within the shelters, how they'd like the shelters connected to one another from a transport layer perspective. And then we have one upcoming on the 4th ID in the October-November timeframe. But I think the intention really is to get after that operational context and that feedback so that we really can design that lighter, more survivable and agile command post in the future.
Mr. Sachs mentioned earlier, fielding ITN to BCTs both in 21 and 22 and integrating into Stryker and ultimately armor formations. But clearly there's, efforts that are modernizing beyond just the BCT focus. Colonel Linneman, what are you seeing at the division level, as your focus in terms of mitigating some of that network complexity?
Thanks. So as we look at mitigating network complexity, really candidly, and it's not the best way to do it, but it really comes down through TTPs. Right now, the division's split across capability sets. 2 of the combat brigades have CPCE, and the other brigades have Command Post of the Future still. And so we really have to mitigate through TTPs. At the division level, we maintain instances of both so that we can communicate to the brigade natively inside whichever capability they have on par. But that is one of the bigger issues we run into with mitigating complexity. We really drive through it through TTPs. We don't have a sound data solution to that yet for routing the data that way.
Lieutenant Colonel Coleman, there's been a lot of interest. Sorry, I know you're writing down. I don't want to catch you off guard. There's been a lot of interest in the Army leveraging commercial SATCOM such as LEO and MEO technology. Is the Army looking at potential as-a-service business case for the sustainment tactical network and other efforts?
Okay, Justin, thanks for your question. So we're looking at SATCOM as a managed service, as I mentioned earlier, as we get after the data critical area of the unified network. We're looking at options as SATCOM as a managed service for the Army's tactical network as a whole, to include other functional areas as we tackle this complex problem of integrating the enterprise and the tactical networks. We're also looking at it as a managed service as an option.
All right, I think now's probably a good time to open up some audience Q&A. So we'll start fielding any questions that you guys have out there. Is that a hand up over there, I think?
Okay. You guys got me? This question is G6, First Corps G6. Can you hear me? You talked about that program that are ongoing in some of the corps and the divisions, like the mobile command groups. Is there opportunities to collaborate with you and bring that underneath your umbrella, so that we're bringing together some of the innovative ideas that are happening down at that level and nesting it inside the enterprise with the ways that you're moving forward? Specifically, I talk about we're looking at doing a group with a set of and perhaps a ability.
All right, that's a great question. Basically, you were asking, is there opportunities to continue to share with units as far as configurations or maybe designs that they have come up with and how to leverage those in the CPI-2 program? I would say a couple things on that front is definitely soldier feedback is key, really to the whole collective kind of network CFT, C5ISR, and PEO team. So any and all concepts are kind of being considered right now as part of the CPI-2 program. I know I'll just use 3-101 as my example. When we were out there, that unit actually gave us some feedback on designs that they would prefer to see versus maybe the ones that they were given as part of their experimentation CPI-2 set. And so definitely we're collecting that feedback. And I guess I would say it's not limited to just to units and soldiers. I think also we're garnering a lot of feedback from industry as far as additional configurations or flexible designs of our CPI-2 shelters and the way that the network is connected within those shelters. And so the whole point of having a sort of a 2-increment approach is to garner that feedback before we actually go forward with the kind of the final design, which will be in increment 1. So before we field those remaining, I think it's 86 BCTs, divisions, core mobile command groups, and units of that nature, we really want to make sure we have the requirements correct. And so following the operational assessments and following the additional feedback we're getting from events like NetModX, there's going to be an update, for lack of a better term, to the requirements in FY22. And so that'll definitely change some of the base of issue, some of the design, and some of the capabilities that are being deployed now. And hopefully that answers your question.
See a hand up right there.
There we go. Yeah, I was just wondering that you feel with the PACE plan, as you look at the different capability sets coming out, most likely you look at a near-peer fight, going in that near-peer fight, having very limited degraded comm structure. How you feel with the current state and where are your major concerns at in regards to our shortfalls or those gaps?
Maybe I'll kick that off, and then the team here could follow me up or straighten me out. So again, from the science and technology perspective, you heard Mr. Welsh talk about some of the programs that we're working right now, adding intelligence into the network. And the way I look at that, when we talk about automating the PACE plan, to me it's not just a toggle down your A/B switch all the way down, your PACE kind of plan. It's also being aware of the environment and making decisions based upon commander's intent and the environment. And I think that's where we're trying to get to. There's an incredible amount of sensor technology out there. There's an incredible amount, we talk about the data challenges, but there's data that's out there. I think what we have to focus on as a community is kind of that integration piece where we say, okay, we have these things. What is it going to take to pull them together, make sense of that at machine speed, and then execute our PACE plan accordingly. And to follow on to the actual transports that are a part of the PACE plans or potential future PACE plans, right? And that's really where our focus is. Those key transports, we're seeing an incredible amount of capability that's out there, both on the commercial side, and then before I talked about some of the partnerships we have with industry as we iterate on technologies with you and put them through the paces of operational threat, forward-looking operational threat. And I think that loop, as we continue to go through that, is giving us more and more confidence as we shape the design goals of the capability sets as a team and help us to make those right decisions, as well as make sure that we have the capacity, the latency type requirements, but then also the protection requirements as we work through our network challenges. So if I could set that context, and then I don't know if the team wants to jump in to give anything more on that.
No, I wasn't going to go right away, but as a G6, I live and die by a PACE plan. It's critical for me. So just 3 quick comments to that, I guess. So the first thing is transport diversity. Candidly, we need more of it. Right now, we are overly dependent on SATCOM and on a very few bands of SATCOM. And so as we look to the future, we hope that more solutions for SATCOM would be delivered to us from the program office. That's kind of what we're looking for, is not just a single type of dish that operates on a single band, but other things that we can have variance and diversity in transport, as well as anything else that's out there. A whole bunch of interesting things in science and tech. If I had time to read more, I would read more about free space optics and all those other things. But right now, it's kind of great ideas. I'm just trying to survive the PACE plan and I'm fighting. So definitely for transport diversity. There's also working with our 2 and our 3-9 and our SEMA chief. Really, one of the things that we're focused on in the division is signature management for our talks. John Ray kind of talked to it when you look at electronic warfare, and baking that in from the outset so that we know what we look like in our PACE plan, and that has effect on my PACE plan. It's not the PACE plan, but it definitely does have effect on it. When we choose to to turn off our upper TI and fight off of a JVCP because that fits the signature management that we want to present to the enemy to give the enemy a targeting dilemma. Because if we can make ourselves look like a platoon, then there's a lot more platoons in the battle space for the enemy to shoot at than just us. And so when we talk about our PACE plan, it's important that we bake in the lower TI and that it suits a higher level signature management plan that's conceived by the SEMA team, which is generally the 6, the 2, the 3-9, and the SEMA chief, all working hand in hand together on that. And then the last thing is, every time I've been near the X, the first thing that go is usually something comms related. It's just bad luck, but it happens. So you always have to account for the ability to operate on the edge. Edge is one of those words that means a lot of things to a lot of people. Generally, we see the edge as the forwardmost element of that echelon of command. So edge changes by the echelon. A platoon's edge is different than a battalion's edge. It's different than a division's edge. Edge changes by echelon, but we have to account for our ability to function in our mission on the edge in a disconnected environment. How we define that, whether it is hours, minutes, or days, that's how we define that. But it's one of the things, and that goes back to the signature management plan of maybe we deliberately choose to turn off our upper TI so we can move a little bit faster, move a little bit lighter, move a little bit darker, and then we have a deliberate time, a comms window to come up, sync data against the cloud, pull data from the cloud, locally cache it, and then move out to a different location that the enemy doesn't know where that is. So we can then process it there at the edge. So that's the end of my comments. So.
All right, thanks. Great question. All right, there's two right in the middle. I'm going to go to the one closest to us first. Yeah, ma'am. I can't see. Sorry. Oh, go ahead.
So I got two questions really. So what you just said about automating the PACE plan.
We can't hear you up here. Sorry.
Yeah, so if I understand the question correctly, and I don't think the microphones are working up there, but appreciate the outside voice. You talk about when we automate the PACE plan, are we thinking about using artificial intelligence? And I think the short answer is yes. But I think, I think everybody that's been up here talking about the challenge of data, I mean, that's where we are right now. In using technologies like artificial intelligence or machine learning, the usual terms we're talking about, really requires us getting the right data to the right places so that technology can work its magic, right? So I would say it has to iterate over time. The first thing is, as we have pretty complex networks already, and the future is only going, if we're going to deliver resiliency through diversity, they're only going to get more and more and more complex as the operational environment gets more and more complex. We have to get our handle on that data issue. And getting our arms wrapped around that data issue, the more and more we do that, the more and more we can apply those technologies. Because like I said earlier, it's about doing things at machine speed versus human speed. And that's how we're going to get there. So the short answer is yes. I don't think anybody has the nut cracked yet to kind of go across a heterogeneous network from terrestrial-based and satellite communications-based transports to basically say, I can just turn AI on and poof, a miracle is going to occur. And that's where we need your help. And that's really kind of what I think you're hearing as a theme across the board as we move forward, is we kind of need the overall community's help. But that's a great question. Thank you. Did the team have anything more on that, or you had something, Matt?
Yeah, I can add to that. So, so obviously, I think you're absolutely correct, Mike. The artificial intelligence and machine learning were both topics of our recent technology exchange meeting in Havre de Grace. So I hope you were able to participate in that discussion with industry. It's clearly a little bit further out. I think it's a focus of CAPESAT 25, and the reason for that is a lot of these technology spaces really have to be overlaid with an operational context. So as a G6 or an S6, I'm pretty sure that you want some insight into what the automatic PACE plan is going to be, and you don't want like the computer deciding for itself that I'm just going to jump over to SATCOM or jump over to you know, some other terrestrial comms layer without your knowledge. And so you're going to want to have the ability for units and soldiers to be able to kind of input in, you know, what is the right pace plan for their organization for a given time and a given mission set, and then allow the kind of that machine learning to be able to, you know, jump at that more network speed based on that rule set. And so a lot of that, I think, has to still be designed into the network. A lot of that's kind of being a lot of the forward-leaning things that the C5ISR Center is doing with their S&T and their research and development. But that's not to say that it's certainly not a focus, and we do want to integrate that into the network and the capability set over time. I think part of it right now, and I think this is where industry can really help us, is having kind of those transport-agnostic network layer devices that allow for that, right? Have radios that are multi-mode or multi-band type radios that'll jump between spectrums, you know, when commanded, or have network devices that can swap from, say, you know, a terrestrial layer to a SOTCOM layer type of a device. And so I know I talked to a lot of different industry partners yesterday, and we discussed that multiple times, just making sure that your systems are sort of available for that ability to kind of manage the network by our units and soldiers.
All right, you said you had one more question.
Thank you for your question, and you're absolutely spot on. So high altitude is a technology that we are looking at maturing from a tactical network perspective, and so we are partnering with the S&T. We are looking at what those design goals will be for CAPESAT 23 and CAPESAT 25. So that is certainly on our radar as a capability that we certainly need to mature that the operational community needs. And so I would expect that our industry partners will see more RFIs on that capability to help inform our market research and support that capability as a part of CAPESATs in the future.
And if I could jump in, another great question. Thank you for that. So there's a lot of ongoing activities, and it have been for quite some years in regards to both tactical use of balloons and other use. I believe there's an ongoing JCTD going on and a few other activities that are ongoing as we speak that are looking at high altitude and a variety of different capabilities on those platforms. So when you walk the path on communications, you can say, hey, am I trying to create a relay? Am I trying to bridge over terrain? Or am I trying to become a surrogate for a platform that may or may not be available at that time, such as a satellite surrogate or something like that? So all of those items are being looked at, and there's different investments both from a science and technology perspective, experimentation, but then also I mentioned some of the joint capability technology demonstrations that are aligned to the combatant command. So I think you're going to see quite a bit over the next months or years in regards to that space. But the short answer to your question is yes, we're looking at it and looking at what it needs to be. And then there's that other bigger question, who owns it, who deploys it, which is not necessarily a technology issue, but there's a bigger question about who's able to put those balloons up or those capabilities. But great question, thanks.
All right, there was somebody, right behind you.
Testing, there we go. My question is for Colonel Linneman, and I apologize in advance. It's quite narrow regarding some of the new equipment being fielded or tested at the division level. My name is Sam Lacine. I'm the S6 or 3rd Special Forces Group, but a former S6 and Signal Company Commander in Bastogne Brigade, and did OCT rotations at JRTC for also Strike and Rakkasan in the same year. I saw numerous capability sets and C5I equipment being fielded with technologies and capabilities that I thought was revolutionary, but didn't mesh well with how the warfighter preferred and chose to fight. And in this point in time with the 101st, it was heavy on half, air assault operations, very expeditionary, very fast, and newly fielded hardware and capability sets were literally left behind in motor pools during deployments or never made it into the box at JRTC. And it's not the first time a new species of communications gear causes friction. We have the same problems in SOF, and my question is if you've seen a culture shift in how the 101st fights or approaches operations in order to begin capitalizing on some of the mission command capabilities that these new technologies provide? And if so, what was the catalyst or tipping point that started those conversations?
Hey, thanks. I really appreciate that question. That's a great question, and it's one of the few questions I'm really excited to answer. So I will tell you, because I'm a simple person, something I actually understand. So people are more important than hardware. It's a fundamental truth. You throw tech at a problem, and your processes are not sound, like not the computer processes, but how you staff, how staff does MDMP, how staff communicates internally themselves in fights. If you got a bad staff, no amount of technology is going to fix that. You just got a bad staff. So throwing tech at the problem doesn't always fix the problem. So to your question about what is the catalyst and why do we think it's going to stick this time, just in my experience, being very heavy in G6 time and S6 time, I have seen a much more defined appreciation of the network and communications professionals within the past 2 years than I've seen in my career immediately preceding. I don't know how many times I've been pulled into my commanding general's office now, or when I was the Sajid AJ6, pulled into the commanding general's office there to talk about data. I mean, it's, hey Randy, where is our data being housed? How are we interrogating our data? How is the data exposed? These are the questions that the general officers are asking me, that the senior mission commanders are asking me. Can you advise me on the best way to leverage and use data? And I usually say, yes, let me go get the 2, let me go get the SEMA chief, let me go get the 3-9, and we will all talk to you about how to use data right and the best way to fight your fight. And so I do think it will stick this time. Kind of to your question, I don't see the equipment being left and, hey, we're just going to fight this off of ASIPs and we're going to call it good enough, because the senior mission commanders are the ones with the greatest appreciation of what the network and data are going to bring to the fight, to accelerate their OODA loop, to achieve decision dominance, and make the right decisions at the right time, especially as we move towards large-scale combat operation, where the unit of action is becoming the division, where it's traditionally been the brigade in the past for us. So now you have a more robust staff with a more seasoned commander that can really drive that as well. And so I really do. I know I don't have a good closure on that, but I do think it will stick this time, because I think there's a greater appreciation at the senior mission commander level of what the data and network are bringing to the fight. And then also the last thing, I think the tech is right. Like, I think that we are primed to start leveraging cloud, hybrid cloud, whatever you want to talk about. We're primed to start leveraging a central data repository point, which we can reach back to through gate or RF anywhere and transport diversity, because those are materializing and they're real and they're available now. We're not doing anything at 101st. We don't develop. We don't do any of that stuff. We use modern solutions for modern problems. We use what is currently available to solve what we currently need to do. And that's kind of what we're really focused on, and it's working. And so, I mean, I'll tell you, I'm excited every day to go to work, because I've got a CG, a handful of ACGs, and all my brigade commanders want to talk to me about the network and data and how we can fight it better. So I hope that helps to answer the question. Let me know if you have a follow-up.
No, thanks, sir. I appreciate it.
All right, we have time for one more, and I'll go right in the middle, sir.
Can you hear me?
There it is, okay. Hold it down though. All right. There's no question everyone in this room understands the importance of data.
Sir, it's hard to understand you with your mask on. I'm sorry. Maybe you could get closer to the mic or remove it. Thank you.
Understands the importance. Yeah, this mic is, I don't know, touchy. hopefully you can hear me, but the point is, and I think data security, and, but where do you rank evolution of zero trust? Yeah, it's real touchy. Where do you rank data security and the resources that you might be putting towards that? Because I think that that's something that needs a lot of attention.
Okay, so the question is, where do we rank zero trust and data security and the resources that are available to support that? Is that about right?
Yeah, and where are the resources being put towards that?
Arnold Linneman, you have anything on that?
Yeah, yes, you know, I'm a tactical level leader, and so security is the first principle of patrolling. You don't ever give up your security. That's the thing. It's a basic tenet. Everything we do is focused on security. If we're talking about what we're going to do or what we're thinking about doing, security is always baked in from the outset. There's a lot of wicked complexity to it when you start talking about identity, credentialing, access management, and how we know you are you on the network, and all of those, and PKI authentication and that, but we gladly welcome it because it has to be secure. Now, generally when we look at zero trust, I'm looking for that to come from our program offices generally because I don't have the engineering skill resident in the division to do that myself. So kind of give it over to DEVCOM or to C3T.
Yeah, I can add to that. So I think you guys recall earlier General Ray talking about kind of the FY22 priorities for the network CFT going forward. The fact that we really have to get after this data-centric environment, that we want this transport-agnostic environment, and that we want that security and encryption to be sound. So clearly a top priority in the network CFT, which means it's also a top priority for us in PEO C3T. Certainly, while zero trust is sort of a new environment, I think we're sort of exploring that as far as implementing that in a number of our systems. So I know there's a number of industry partners kind of leaning forward in that. But encryption of that data and making sure that it's still available to our users is going to be key as we move into the operational environment. And I think more and more you've heard from our operational perspective is that we don't want to have to deploy with servers on our backs or large racks of equipment and all the data forward. We really want to be able to pull that from some other remote location, maybe in the cloud. And so that's going to demand us to make sure that that data is indeed secure and it's going to the right individuals at the right trust levels and making sure that they're able to make that kind of that operationally informed decision from data from a variety of disparate sources. And so as we evolve the requirements in that area, the data security layer, I think you're going to find that we really do need a lot of partnership, both with our S&T partners and our industry partners, on exploring additional options in that regard. I know one of the facets we've already sort of focused on with our tactical network partners, for example, is taking a lot of the hardware-based ComSec and migrating that to a software-based type solution to make it easier for units to deploy without having to carry extra, ComSec gear that has to be put in safes in the evening and things like that. So, I think there's more to be done in that area. And clearly, as we look at environments like a zero trust environment where you want to make sure that every user is sort of not trusted or not authenticated until after a variety of data checks or integrity checks have been done, I think that we can certainly implement those types of solutions. And I think my biggest concern, from an interoperability standpoint, is just making sure that we can do that and provide that security layer without overburdening kind of the transport layer or the network, such that all of that extra security uses up the available bandwidth that the units need to actually pass real data.
Yeah, Matt, and just a couple quick things on that is really the challenge there to the community, right, is we have an opportunity to think differently as we transition from that network focus to a data focus or data-centric design. That interoperability on the protection side of things, I didn't use the word crypto because there's other techniques out there that may make more sense in certain cases, right? But that's really the challenge that's out there. And the one thing I don't want us to all forget is you know, it's about the joint fight, but it's really about our partners, our coalition partners and allies, and that's going to be a huge challenge as we go forward. So that's that outside of the box thinking and innovation that's really going to get us where we need to go. So with that said, Justin, you saw him kicking me over here before. It means we're out of time. So I just want to make a few remarks to close out this panel here this morning. So just as MDO and JADC2 requires integration and synchronization across the multiple domains, as we modernize our network, we can't, as I said before, we can't work this in a vacuum. So it really does take a really strong team across the science and technology, the network CFT, acquisition community, and the operational community, and really importantly, our industry teammates. And it's the only way we're going to deliver that better network capability, prepare our forces to fight multi-domain operations in those incredibly challenging electromagnetic, spectrum, and cyber environments. And as in any strong team, it's really important that we share ideas and perspectives, and that's how we're going to drive solutions. So really, it's important, and I'll just foot stomp these few things you heard from the team today, was the most important voice in the room is the voice of our operational counterparts. So I appreciate you being here today, Colonel Linneman. And it's really why our community is continuing to place emphasis on soldier-centered design, soldier touch points throughout our development cycle, whether it be in the laboratories or out in experimentation activities. And we're committed to gaining soldier feedback in all of our projects as early and often as possible, and as early in the development cycle as our research, development, and science and technology. I can't emphasize enough, the partnerships are essential. The partnerships with industry are essential, and it's the only way we're going to deliver these innovative capabilities. So I encourage all the industry partners out there. I don't care whether you're a small company to large companies or not. I talked a little bit about cooperative research and development agreements. We're interested in component level capabilities or technologies all the way up to those systems. And again, I want to thank the fantastic panelists here today for sharing their perspectives. I want to thank AFCEA once again and the Army Cyber Center of Excellence for hosting us and this opportunity to engage the community. So again, thank you all for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
All right, Mike, I'm not sure if you've got some admin remarks as well. Thanks, everyone.
You know, I can't say enough about this panel. They talk to you from the heart about supporting you, and thank you for your questions. I want to thank Nick Sachs and Joe Welch and this cross-functional team for your support for this event today. But I also want to thank two other people. One I haven't seen here, Paul Haney, I don't think he's here right now, and Justine Ruggio. Those two were the backbone in putting this together for the team, and I can tell you that we worked not just minutes, but hours on this. And they also were the partial architects of the PEO facility that we have out on the floor. So go visit that. And if you'll notice, there's a little office space on either side. You can have your private sessions there as opposed to anywhere else right there on the floor. So thanks to the panel again. I really appreciate your effort. I need to make a few administrative remarks. Lunch is being served, and I know that we want to get back over to Reynolds Street. No hurry, because we have extended our lunch hours to support social distancing. The next session this afternoon will be in the Oglethorpe Ballroom with a panel implementing unified networks led by Major General Barrett. She also speaks later in the afternoon. So that's going to be a good panel, and that's going to tie some of the speakers here and other speakers that we've had this week. I think that'll be an engaging session. That'll begin at 2:15. Then there's also a women's panel that's going to focus on technology and challenges, and that'll run at about 4 o'clock. And immediately following that, which all of you will be happy with, will be a reception if you participate for that. I want to thank you again for being here this week. I want to thank you for working through the mask thing. We're going to get through COVID. We're making it happen right now, and the crowd that we have here today and over at the Convention Center is quite extraordinary, and I thank you for that. Keep up the great work, and thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your week.
2, 3, 3, 2, 1, 1, 3. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2.